Um, okay, got it. Kurt, you want to lead off?
Sure. Welcome, everyone. Great to see everyone again. I wanted to let everybody know that we had a very good meeting the other day with our tribal group, our tribal partners. And I think we also have a Zoom best practices. I don't know if our moderator is going to come on and talk about some of the Zoom best practices right quick.
Our moderator Larissa had to head to another meeting. So
she had to head off. Okay.
Yeah, Jamie's good with that. Jamie?
Okay.
Oh, just if you're in order to save bandwidth,
Yep.
unless you're speaking, don't have your camera on. And the same thing with your microphone. If you can keep it muted for any outside noise. Those are the two best practices. There is the raise your hand function if you want to ask a question. I think that's about it, Kurt.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that's it. Well, thanks. And a few things. We do have some updates for the ROD. I'm looking forward to giving those as the meeting goes on. I think we've got some good pieces to chat about as we move through the meeting. And as always, folks, this is an interactive meeting. It's your meeting. We're here to help, and so keep it as interactive as possible. Back to you, Jamie. Thank you.
Okay. Let's go through. I'm just going to go through in the order I have people. If you can introduce yourself. Tracy, why don't you start off?
All right, I'm Tracy Cottingham, and I've been on the MAC, I'm going to say 4 years. And I am currently the cultural heritage person and the vice chair. I live on Lopez Island, and for going on 24 years, I think. Thank you.
Thanks. Larissa. Or you said she went to another meeting?
Oh, and she's not a MAC member. She is our the setting up the
Moderate.
Zoom.
Yeah. Okay. Dell.
All right, there I am. Good morning, Del Gunther. I'm another Lopesian. I represent ecology and wildlife.
Thank you. Amy.
Good morning, I'm Amy Nestler, Stewardship and Communications Manager for the San Juan Islands Visitors Bureau. I represent Recreation and Tourism, and I am new to the MAC.
Great, thank you. Tom.
Hi, Tom Reeve, south end of Lopez Island, right next to Iceberg Point, and I, like Tracy, represent cultural and heritage issues.
Great. Cindy.
Good morning, Cindy Smith here. I also live on Lopez and represent Recreation and Tourism.
Great, thanks. Rick.
Good morning. My name is Rick Wiggery. I live on the south end of Lopez Island. Moved here in '72. I'm on the MAC representing the public at large. I'm also a BLM trail monitor, and looking forward to the meeting.
Okay. Thank you. Genevieve.
Let's see. Hi. Can you see me? There we go.
Yes, now we can.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Genevieve Thomas. I represent the public at large. I have a long association with the islands as an inner islander from Shaw Island, and also in my professional life represent cultural heritage of the San Juan Islands, based on working as a consulting archaeologist.
Great, thank you. Ruth.
Good morning. I'm Ruth Milner. I represent ecology and wildlife.
Thank you. Sam.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Sam Barr, and I represent tribal interests. I've been involved with the MAC for a few years now.
Thanks, Sam. Jay.
Good morning, everybody. Jay Havner, live on Lopez, private landowner's position and relatively new to the MAC. Good morning.
Good morning. And Aaron.
Hello, this is Erin Cora. I represent the education and interpretation for the MAC, and I've been on since its inception.
Great. Thank you. And I'm Jamie Stevens. I represent electeds, and I'm the chair. I am going to have to duck out at 11:20, and I believe either Tracy or Tom will finish the meeting. I can't remember. Tracy, did you have to leave early too?
No, it's just I've been coughing and hacking. I'm drinking tea. So if I can't talk, Tom will step in.
Okay.
Sorry.
I see you demonstrated. Okay, so I'm going to ask Kurt about, we're reviewing the terms, but I was just wondering where we are on the status of people applications, or what we should be concerned with on possible open positions. I know, like I believe Rick is up next year, like in May or something.
Yep. And Jeff, Mr. Clark, our public affairs officer for Spokane, is going to handle that. Jeff, all yours, buddy.
Okay, the call for nominations that we mentioned at the last MAC meeting did close. We only got 3 applications this time, which is very normal for a RAC, but it's very unusual for the MAC because normally we get a lot more than that. Good news is it makes it a lot faster for me to get those packages all finalized and pushed up to the headquarters. And if those 3 positions are all, or those 3 applications are all approved, then that will fill our missing positions. So those 3 positions, we had applications for all 3, so they would be filled if they all get approved. So that would be a good thing. It was the 2 public at large and 1 of the wildlife ecological positions. And then we've got 4 positions. There's probably going to be another call for nominations that will come out next fall. And that would be in time for us to get fill 4 positions that expire October 14th of 2024, which is yours, Janie, local government, also a private landowner, tribal, and cultural heritage. So that's good news because we'll probably have just a very close to a full year of pushing those applications forward. And then so it's very likely that they would be filled in time for that one. And even the May, they probably won't be filled by May 21st, but probably before the next meeting that you guys schedule on that May meeting.
Right.
Okay.
So they expire right after our next meeting, or not our we'll go through the meetings later in the agenda for what we have put in for. And then if how soon might we hear about the February meeting, Jeff?
Oh, as far as the Federal Register notice, probably around the middle of January would be the soonest we'd see that that's getting published and that we're good to go.
All right. So if you
But
see
that Federal Register notice went in. I'm sorry, I was just going to say that went in basically a day after you guys finalized the meeting point. So it was kind of tight for the 90 to 120 day window, but we should be good to go. I don't see any reason why that won't get published. And the 30-day requirement for being published prior to a meeting is a BLM requirement. It's not the FACA requirement. It's not Federal Register notice requirement. Those are 15 days. So it's easily waived and it happens all the time. It's happened for us pretty recently even. So I don't see it going to be a problem to get a February meeting in.
All right. Well, and we'll talk about that a little bit later to make sure everyone has the dates on their calendars. But if you see that being delayed, let me know. Thank you.
We have it was circulated the draft minutes from our October 6th meeting, and we need to approve those unless there's some changes. So I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes from October 6th. Tom?
Yeah, I'll move that, and I will have one edit to recommend as well.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Yeah, and do we want to hear what the addition is from Tom before
I need a second
approving?
first. I need a
Okay.
second first. So
Sorry.
if we can,
I heard a second in there.
oh, you did hear a second? Okay. So Tom, discussion.
I just wanted to, in these minutes and going forward, renew the practice that we've had in the past of having the attendance listed out by name rather than just by number. I think it's important that we know who attended the meeting so we know whose voices were heard or not heard on any decisions we make.
Okay. Sounds good. Any other additions, deletions, corrections? Okay, hearing and seeing no hands. All those, well, for this, the attendance would be going forward, but on these, the motion is to approve. So all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed and abstentions. Okay, motion carries. So we're going to go through, as everyone knows, we don't have the record of decision yet. But anyway, we just had the updates on nominations. So we'll get additional information on the record of decision, the tribal meeting update from Rich, any questions that we have on either of those events, and then we'll get a report from Bree, and we'll have comment and presentation by Tom Reeve. So that's what we're going to be doing today. And with that, I'll move on to the status updates. So Kurt.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. So good news on the rod, actually. About 3 weeks ago, and I'm going to take a half step back before I even get to 3 weeks ago. The Southeast Oregon has been doing a resource management plan update. They submitted their information just like we did, but they did it a year ago. In 1 year, they have not moved to the spot that we are right now. So we've jumped ahead of them by leaps and bounds. So that's great news because that means that we have a chance of getting this done very quickly. So what happened 3 weeks ago is the Bureau Director, Tracy Stone Manning, met with myself and Bree and some of our Oregon, Washington state staff. And also present was Nada Culver, and Nada Culver is let me just remember that, she is the Deputy Director of Policy and Programs for the department. So in essence, they were a body that we had to go through and make sure that we got their approval before it moves forward. So we met with them, we presented a PowerPoint of some of the issues, some of the things that are going on, where we think the rod is, why we think the rod should be approved. And in essence, at the end of that meeting, we were approved to move forward. So in essence, both of them moved forward the process. So now we are through our headquarters. We are on to department. Department is the final, I don't want to say obstacle, but the final hurdle that we have to get through. And it is sitting on what they call the ASLM, which is the Assistant Director of Lands and Minerals for the Department of the Interior. So right now it's sitting on that desk. They do know that we were having this meeting. We did have a correspondence with them, I think about a week and a half ago. And in essence, they said that they were at the review process, which is great. So we're at a point now where we're actually getting to think about what do we do when we actually get it? how are we going to process it? What press releases are going to go out? How do we get the final printed? I mean, that's all great news, folks, because we're at a point where we think that we see that definite, it's not even a glimmer of hope. It's not even that light at the end of the tunnel. We could see the light nowadays. So it's great news. We just have to hope they'll get through that last little hurdle. And we don't know yet if they will want to have a meeting with us to get to that final approval, that final thumbs up. Sometimes we do have that meeting. If it does come, it'll either come at the end of this year, or maybe even at the beginning of next year, I hope. And at that point, again, we'll give the same sort of presentation that we gave, where we stand at the ROD, why we think the ROD is at a position that we can approve it. And if we can get to that final stage, once that final signature is made, it'll be reverted back to Barry, and Barry can sign it and we can finalize it. So a couple quick things that'll happen at that point, just so everybody knows. It'll go to print. There is already press releases that we've already formulated that are ready to go. So everybody will get those press releases. There'll be certain newspapers that will present it in right away. We'll let everybody know via email, that sort of thing. So we're already at that stage where we're thinking ahead of how do we get everybody notified as fast as we can once the ROD is finalized. So do I have a time frame? I don't. I'm sorry. I wish I did, but I just don't know how long ASLM will want to review this. I really don't. I wish I did. I had a better idea, but it's encouraging that we've got to this stage because we've leapfrogged over a bunch of other states and resource management plans. So we're at a towards a finish line, I would say.
So
any
Kurt,
questions? Go ahead.
I've got one quick one. So on the agenda here, it has the 30-day process. And then including first view for MAC. What could you explain that a little bit, please?
Yeah, so the 30-day, in essence, we'll let everybody know that we're going to be signing the MAC in person. At the same time, Barry will be signing the ROD, and then what we'll do is we'll have an official signing probably out on the island at some point. And that's the 30 days. So once we know, we will release it to everybody that the ROD's coming, we're going to be signing it, et cetera, et cetera. And then within 30 days, everybody will have that, that's signed up for it, everyone that's commented, et cetera, everybody by that 30-day period will know what's going on and should have contact information, a hard copy of the ROD that will be in a errata sheet that talks about any changes that were made, or if we choose a certain alternative or we chose certain bits of a different alternative, that sort of thing, that will be put up front in an errata sheet so people will see that in the final ROD too. And Mr. Clark will be finalizing that actually and getting a synopsis for everybody. So everybody, when they get that final, if there are significant changes, there will be outlines of what those significant changes were. Does that make sense, Jamie?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Okay, sure.
Tom, you have a question or comment?
Yeah, I was just wondering back on those 30 days. Is that a 30 days without change? Is that after Barry signs it, or is that because I know, for example, if any of the governor's consistency review issues weren't accepted, he gets a 30-day appeal period, which obviously could at least theoretically result in some changes. Or basically, is that notification we're going to get saying, okay, we're done? Is that a real lockdown done, ready to go?
This is that part that starts that 30-day period, Tom. And how you doing, Tom? Good to see you again. So this starts the 30-day period, Tom. So at that point, we would let the governor know what's going on, and we're going to have as much of that spelled out as we can, and that begins his 30-day period. And then if there are no objections from the governor's office and some of our federal partners, at that point, we'll be signing final and trying to get it published at that point. I mean, we're going to have a lot of work to try to get it. We have to get with the government publishing office, GPO, that sort of thing, trying to get finalized procedures down. Does that get to your question, Tom? Did I get that?
Yeah, I think so. It just seems like if the governor's got 30 days to appeal, then there's a chance that it'll take more than 30 days because depending upon what the governor says, you may have additional work to do. And clearly, I would think that you wouldn't send it to the printing office at least until after you knew whether the governor was appealing anything.
Right. And we've been already talking to the governor's office, Tom. So we've already had some of those discussions. So I think we preloaded it, if you know what I mean. We've already had that discussion at that level with the governor's office. So we don't expect 30 days for a long review. Does that make sense? Okay.
Tracy.
Yeah, you covered that very quickly, Kurt. I appreciate it. There I had a couple of questions in that. What point will the MAC be able to see the hard copy? Is that right after Barry signs it? Or is there a 30-day before it goes into public record? There's been some confusion. Does the MAC get to see it when it goes to public record? And is that 30 days after Barry signs it?
So there's two different signings, Tracy. I know this sounds a little weird, but okay. So when we get it back, that's the point at which Barry, when we review it with other entities, Barry will sign it saying, I'm signing as final, but we don't release that until 30 days. Because it's going to take us that long to get printing anyway, Tracy. I mean, we're not going to be able to get it printed that fast. So that's that 30-day period. Will you get it at that time? No, you won't get it till the end of that 30-day period. That's when it's released to the public at that point. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
And spell, you call it an errata sheet. I haven't heard that before. How do you spell that? What is that?
It's not really an errata sheet. It's more of a summary, Tracy, is what I would call it. It's basically outlining if there were any changes made between draft and final ROD. These are the changes, and this is what we're going to move forward with. So in essence, it will spell out, okay, if there were any changes made, here was the draft language, and here is what we possibly have changed or didn't change, that sort of thing. And hopefully that it's just a summary sheet. So if you read through that ROD, it should truly outline the gist or the 80% of what changes it made. But there might be some other minor changes later on in the document, a wording change here or there, but it didn't significantly change the idea of that alternative. Does that make sense?
It does, and that's really good news. We were worried we might have to go through everything to find out what had changed or not.
And that's why I put it right up front, because I get that too. Tracy, I'm the same. I mean, I want to know up front, you know, what is it that if there's been any significant changes, what are those changes? I mean, so I don't want to have to read through the document and try to go through the old document to try to figure out what's changed. So we're going to try to make it as easy as you can. And there's the ROD should point those out very detailed wise, but then also, like I said, Mr. Clark will have a summary. I don't know how long that'll be. It just depends on how many changes are made or accepted. And he'll summarize some of those changes. Does that make sense?
Excellent. And during the protest and comment period, a number of us put in small errors, and I assume those are that whole list, which they weren't a protester, but things that we found discrepancies.
Yes, and that's where the errata sheet comes in, Tracy. That's where those corrections, let's say it's a wording error or something, that's where the errata sheet will come in. Go ahead, Mr. Clark.
And sorry, spell errata for me. I'm sorry.
Oh, Jeff, I'm going to have to ask you to do that.
You can send it to me. ERATA.
Yeah, I'll look it up.
All right, no worries.
Pretty sure. That's really more of a when there's errors in like maps and stuff, they do a sheet to where they don't have to reprint the whole thing. This will be more of an executive summary that's at the front. And if it's very long or not super clear, then the other product that Kurt's referencing is, I mentioned potentially doing like a one sheet fact sheet or something if it's necessary. If the executive summary is now, 12 pages long, then it's not really much of a summary. So we would try to make something a little more digestible.
Well, 12 pages is better than 800. So, and we really appreciate those hard copies. I know some of us are better at just having that hard copy. So it's some point, if you need Bree to find out how many of those we need, or let us know. I think that was all my questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Tracy.
You had a comment in the chat that you want to bring up?
Yes,
Yeah,
and
I
Tom,
just,
okay.
yeah, it's self-evident in the chat. Go ahead, Go ahead, Kurt.
And that's who we've been coordinating with, Tom. So I know we've reached out to him a few times, had a few light discussions with his office. I don't think we've met in a little while yet, but yeah, I'm just gonna leave it there, Tom. But we have chatted with him. God, it was a while ago, but like when we drafted the final rod, we had a quick discussion with them, and yeah, they were happy with a lot of the things we made.
Sorry, I did come up with one more question on your quick telling us everything about the whole process. You mentioned that BLM would be sending out to everyone that commented or protesting. Is that what I heard?
Yeah, yes,
So-
everyone that had that was part of that notification would get a notification that we are ready to sign the final rod.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions on or comments on the record of decision? Okay, Rich, then we'll move on to Rich and the tribal update.
Good morning, everybody. This is Rich Bailey. I'm the Spokane District Archaeologist and Tribal Liaison. We had a meeting yesterday with tribes to get some guidance and input from them regarding how they would like the forum to operate and be organized. So the BLM was working with the tribes on an agreement document that will formalize the purpose and intent of the forum. The meetings will be confidential, and the information discussed at those meetings will be protected in, among the tribes in BLM because it will be FACA exempt. So we won't necessarily describe the topics that are discussed at those meetings with the MAC, but tribal members or representatives from the forum can share that information at the MAC if they choose to.
Yeah, hi everybody. This is Sam. Yeah, we're just I think trying to get really a good handle on what the forum is and how it's going to operate. As you know, myself being a single tribal member from a single tribe, it's really not feasible for me to represent multiple governments at once, and so we're trying to set up official government to government agreements between each tribe, and then those tribes are going to represent themselves through that forum. I don't have anything really specific to share from the meeting, but I can tell you that we'll be discussing different cultural things, perhaps place names, perhaps ways to protect cultural resources, and that we're going to really be, each tribe will be advocating for themselves, and we're trying to really create a safe environment for us all to have those discussions and feel like that information is protected. So I just want to thank you all for being respectful of that and for being patient as we figure out that whole process. And as we have things that are relevant to this committee, I'll bring them here, or we'll invite other tribal partners that are on the forum here to this meeting. And I will also be trying to report back vice versa from this meeting to that meeting. So yeah, any questions?
I think Tom had a question, Sam, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I really appreciate all you guys are doing to make sure that the tribes feel appropriately engaged and trusted in this process. And I think Sam answered my question fairly well at the end, which is I really want to encourage that forum to realize and to appreciate that the MAC is also trying to engage on the management of the monument, and we want to not be oblivious to tribal concerns, tribal desires, and it sounded like Sam was trying to ensure that when there was consensus or when there were significant issues that the MAC should hear about, the MAC finds a way of hearing about it, either directly through SAM or directly from a tribe. I just want to make sure that that happens, and that we don't leave it as a passive activity to say, well, if any tribe wants to bring it up, they can. That sounds like it's more likely things will fall through the cracks, and we will be oblivious to the fact that there are concerns out there that we're not aware of.
Yeah, great. Thanks for sharing that, Tom. That's really good to hear. Yeah, I can pass that on. I think we're really at like beginning stages right now. It's not a lot to report. We are feeling a little anxious and nervous that we have no idea what the ROD is gonna say. The tribes did put forward quite a few protests in just about every area, and it's not to say it was a horrible plan, the initial draft or anything, but we have a lot of concerns and a lot of things that we'd like to see, and so we're just eagerly awaiting the release of the ROD, and then I'm sure there will be a lot more activity and discussion.
Sam, I just have a question. If it's kind of following up on what you said and what Tom was just commenting, would it be appropriate to know who the participants are, or the designated person, or the different tribes, so we could invite them, or notify them, and if they had wanted to come to one of these meetings and have input on the tribal forum? I'm not sure the exact way I should word this, but
Right. Well, the tribes are all aware of this forum as well, and we're aware of the dates, and they're all aware, and Rich and Kurt made it clear that any of them can come to this meeting. We talked about this meeting, and so I don't know if they need a separate invitation. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really want to give out names for sure. We might be able to say which tribes are participating in that forum, but kind of to the question, everyone's aware of this meeting, and they're aware that it's a open invitation. Everything that info does get passed on at those meetings.
Okay, I think with what Tom was saying, we don't want to be oblivious to or dismiss or not be aware of the concerns or whatever. They don't have to be concerns, just what the ideas are at the tribal forum.
Yeah, sure. I could just give a really broad brush about some of the things that we protested. It's mostly just concerned about a sharp increase in recreation. We're concerned about limitations to hunting and abuse to the plants and ecosystems, and protecting the cultural and archaeological resources. Feel pretty passionate about those things, yeah, and that there's some places in the MAC or in the monument that there shouldn't be tourism, but it's really tricky. I'll tell you all that it's really hard to say where we don't want people to go, because then everyone knows that is where the sacred spots are at. And so there's kind of no great way to do that. It's really unfortunate that there's not just more respect for those things in the public at large, as we've seen at other national monuments nationally, the vandalism that can happen. And so I think that, yeah, so it's hard to share.
Yeah, I understand that. That's okay. That's good. Any other questions or comments? And Rich, did you have anything else? We kind of got sidelined here, or sidetracked a little bit.
No, thank you. Thanks, Sam, for stepping in and providing some information. a lot of the details of the organization and how the forum will be operated is still in discussion. And so once we have more of those things developed in that group, then we'll be able to report better out to you and what's approved or appropriate to share with MAC.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Well, we just went through this, but last thing, any other questions on the ROD or the tribal forum? Okay, then we can move on to Bree and your report. Okay.
Hi, sorry.
Nice Christmas tree.
My mute button moved when I shared my screen and I couldn't find it. So hi everyone. Yeah, I wanted to show you all this picture to start out with. This is Denise Welk setting up our Christmas tree over at the Rosario Resort for the Keepers of the Potatoes Light, and just wanted to just show you all. She did a beautiful job, and it's so great to see, you know, this variety of representations of the monuments and just the stewardship in action for, you know, the resources that we have out here. So I just wanted to share that with all of you and encourage you all to go see it if you're over on Orcas Island. Okay. You know, I've actually never shared anything on there it is, stop sharing. Okay. All right, so that's that. Let's just talk about a little bit about what's going on in the monument right now. So I think something that's been on my mind a lot, because last summer we weren't able to bring on a season on. It created you know, a lot of challenges for our summer season here. So it sounds like we've got a good person coming on for the summer season, and he is an experienced park ranger who's worked for both the Forest Service and the BLM in other locations, and he decided to come out here and work for us, and has a lot of relevant experience that I was looking for. It was just like such the ideal candidate that I felt truly lucky to have found him and have had him so interested in being a part of our operations this summer. If I could have designed a candidate for a park ranger position, it would have been Andrew. And so I will be communicating with him to try to find some seasonal housing for him on Lopez Island, and hope to be you know, over there out on the land, interacting and engaging the public for the majority of his summer. Also, this summer is a big year for the monument, as it is our 10th anniversary. And so Jeff and I have been having some chats about what kind of things we want to do to recognize that, and to recognize and show our appreciation to all of the folks that have been so involved in making this monument happen, and you know, for their active stewardship in the last decade. I've been talking with Marcia about it a little bit too, and she's had some great ideas, you know, and so we'll figure out what we could do to bring that forward and make something happen. We also have a bunch of other things that we'll be doing this summer, including we'll be hosting 2 American Hiking Society volunteer work weekend. One of them will be a women's affinity event, and one of them will be the general open to everyone event that they've been doing for the last few years. Then we will also hopefully be doing some public events. Andrew will be making the rounds of the farmers markets on Saturdays on almost every Saturday basis, and I will be helping out with that on a lot of Saturdays as well. and then we'll also be at the fair. So already kind of thinking ahead to, you know, creating, you know, some effective outreach products for those events and how, you know, that's all going to work out. So it feels like a busy summer, especially since it's only me and I'm, you know, having to do, you know, manage the monument, manage all, you know, all the business aspects of this, and then also think about this, you know, the public engagement and outreach, and do a bunch of different jobs. So I'm looking forward to the day where we can bring on our full-time outdoor recreation planner, and Kurt and I have been talking really closely about that, you know, we'll be moving forward with that that position here fairly shortly. One thing we were waiting on for that position was to make sure that we knew where the duty station was going to be. And so that's the other big announcement I have for you all, is that I have decided to move our monument offices and co-locate with the National Park Service on San Juan Island. And so we will be posting some new address and contact information probably by tomorrow on the website. And so we'll be right there in Friday Harbor, co-located with the Park Service, with the long-term plan of moving into an adjoined suite next to them. But until something becomes available to lease, they've offered to host us, which has really been great for me, because it's been nice to have some moral support and some local knowledge, and to be able to go into an office and collaborate and communicate with others and learn from, you know, the experience of folks that have been here for a while. And Alexis Freedy, who is the park superintendent, and I have been really talking a lot about how we can improve efficiency and serve the public. And, you know, I think we share some of the same challenges, you know, in staffing and finding seasonal housing, and, you know, creating some capacity to support the best candidates to come out and work for, you know, our respective organizations. So I think it'll be good for all of us in the long term, and I'm very excited about it. But what it doesn't mean is, it doesn't mean that we're going to be sharing the same goals and objectives, or moving towards any kind of you know, changing from the BLM to the Park Service or anything like that. It's, you know, it's going to remain a BLM monument. It's going to be true to its proclamation, and you know, it's definitely a very different mission. I think I've talked to some of you about this before, you know, about how our mission allows us to be more conservation oriented than the Park Service, who, you know, it really is about creating a place for the enjoyment of people. Let's see. So another nice thing about being over on San Juan Island is that a majority of our partner organizations have offices and presence there. And so it's really nice to be able to run into folks and to have informal meetings and to meet for lunch, and you know, really be able to do that on a regular basis. And in fact, tomorrow we have a terrestrial managers group meeting that we will be meeting in person, or we'll be doing a, you know, a blended meeting, but I'll be able to go in person and see people there on the island. And I really like to work that way. So, you know, one of those partners is the San Juan Island Conservation District, and I think this will move into kind of the next bullet point on the agenda, is just talking a little bit about, you know, how we work with our partner organizations, and a lot of the ways that we have been managing the monument care is through agreements with our local partners who have the capacity to do work for us, like the Conservation Corps, who's been doing some invasive plant removal at Cattle Point, for example. And we plan on continuing those arrangements and agreements. And you know, they're really depending on, you know, us finding the money to do that, and just funding those projects. And so, you know, the Conservation Corps is one of the kind of long-standing partnerships that we've had, where we've been, you know, have long-term agreements with them, and we'll be renewing their agreement. I believe it's we'll be start working on the renewal this year, because I think they're expiring next year. But it's really cool. I was looking at their website this morning, and they actually have this really cute picture of one of the youth leaders, and it's you know, he's posing with some of the invasive weeds that he pulled down at Cattle Point. So I thought it was really cool that, you know, we can see the impact of our relationships in these organizations, and to see, you know, Cattle Point on there with, you know, this person who is going to be hopefully one of, you know, the next generation of land managers. I thought was really kind of special, and we'll be continuing to support those and looking for new partnerships as we move into our implementation of the RMP, to find organizations with, you know, capacity to help us with our mission. Do have a PSA from the KPL that, you know, they do need board members, and so if anybody is interested in becoming a board member or learning more about that, please reach out to them through their website. Also our monitoring group, which most of you are pretty familiar with, who monitors all of our lands on Lopez Island, is in need of more monitors. And so if anybody is interested in doing that, that can be a great way to help engage with the landscape and become active stewards. And, you know, we've been collecting data from the monitors for over a decade now, and we'll be continuing to develop and grow that program and move it into the future. We're looking at different ways of allowing folks to gather data. You know, in the monitoring forms, the handwritten monitoring forms won't be going anywhere, but we also want to provide some opportunities for folks to also use, you know, PDF forms, for example, where they can fill out a form, click the submit button, and that all the data will get downloaded to a table format and will be in a very usable form for us. We'll be also looking at taking the data that we've collected and making sure that we have all of that in very usable formats that we can use for our implementation processes moving forward. You know, because the data on the land is really important. And I talked to you all about this last week, you know, about gathering visitor use data, and I did buy a whole bunch of new counters, and we'll be placing those out, you know, with the help of Jack and hopefully others and our seasonal employee this summer, so we can gather good visitor use data and you know, see, track, and plan for, you know, what our use really is. Yeah, so it's really, you know, it's the volunteers and the partnerships that really make us what we are, and set us apart from all of the other places that I've worked in the BLM. And the amount of public engagement in church here is phenomenal, and we want to keep that up, keep that momentum moving forward, and, you know, make sure that we are supporting our partners in what they need to be successful. And you know, a couple of those really important partnerships, you know, are the KOPL and the PPLS folks who help manage our lighthouses and maintain a strong presence there. And we would like to, you know, find. We'll be supporting them this summer directly with Andrew being out there, hopefully moving, you know, some of their goals forward as well. So, you know, with the move to a new office, I do want to mention that, you know, I still will be coming over to Lopez quite often, and so there'll be plenty of opportunities for anybody who's there on Lopez Island to meet with me in person. We'll be creating some, you know, regular events where we'll notify the community while I'm there. We can either meet out at the land on the landscapes, or, you know, somewhere in town. And I'll certainly be reachable through my email and the hopefully new VoIP phone lines that we'll get, that will work much better, I think, than what we have right now. And hey, I think that's about all I have for you all this meeting. So if you have any questions for me.
Tom, you turned your camera on. I don't know if you were getting ready to make a comment or a question.
Sure, you didn't even let me raise my hand. I wanted to say thanks to Bree, and I think that the sort of interactions and collaborations she's talking about having in Friday Harbor sound great, and I'm really pleased that those relationships are being built. I think that there are a lot of knowledgeable people out there who can help us advance. For example, I think the Park Service, while I'm sure it's not perfect, has done a lot of work on interpretation with the tribes. If you visit their visitor center at American Camp, it is very different from the traditional visitor center you might expect to see at a historical national park. I did want to encourage Bree to give the MAC as much data as she can about what's going on the ground as time goes on, because as we move into implementation phase, as a MAC tries to reflect community desires, interests, questions about implementation, it'll be very helpful for the MAC to understand things like the visitor data that she's working to collect, any highlights from the monitors reports or from the other support groups like the Lighthouse Protection Groups, the Indian Island Group, anything out there that is worth sharing with us so that we are better informed and are, as I said with the tribal questions, less oblivious as we are opinionated. It shouldn't be just our personal opinions. It should be based on as much data as we can and the conversations we have with the groups we represent. And another thing I think we've brought up in a previous meeting is the annual managers reports. And I note that the website still only has a pretty small subset of the annual management reports up there. Whether or not it's published on the website, I think the MAC should get copied on those. I would encourage Bree to, and others might disagree, overshare with the MAC when she is sharing a management report on the monument, when she's collecting usage data, et cetera. I think the more we understand about what's actually going on out there, the more useful we'll be for both Bree and the community.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Tracy.
Tom. Agreed.
Yeah. Well, I also want to speak to all of the MAC that as we move into implementation, Bree and I and others have talked about how important it will be for us to take in-person tours to some of these places. And especially if Bree is already going out to a place and we can hitch a ride, but state parks certainly is always amenable for getting people out that are working towards solutions and working on challenges. And so that's pretty exciting. We will hear from Tom on what we can learn virtually and learn from what's online. But to get onto these lands, many of us have not been to the places that will have recreation access, and also to understand the places that won't potentially have access. So I wanted to mention that. And also when Bree mentions the new summer seasonal hire, she has mentioned that that person may not need to be on Lopez. A truck could be here, but it could be that they're on Orcas with easy access to the outer islands or on the other islands. So for any of us that can look for housing, Bree, would you say that's correct? It doesn't have to be on Lopez.
Yeah, Teresa, I really prefer them to be on Lopez if possible. But I think it's really important that we get this person here this summer, and so we'll do whatever we need to do to make sure that they are housed. But I'm feeling pretty confident then, and I know, in the past we've had pretty good luck, and I've had talks with Marcia about this. That we'll be able to find someone who have some space for him, and I think too, I was thinking about like our I mean, orcas make sense in certain ways because, but for this year, I'm hoping we can have that person on Lopez, but maybe hopefully in the future, we can have even more than one park ranger in the summer, and that would be great. And then we can have somebody who's helping us, the state parks out on the outer islands and making some more presence on some of, of our other spots, and helping to increase the monitoring of those places and the outreach. But yeah, I dream of a large staff. That's a dream.
Thanks, Bree.
Cindy.
Hello, yeah. So Bree, one of the areas that I'd be really interested in information on would be the large groups. And just because information there and just management of large groups on the monument, I think is going to be a special challenge. And I think the MAC would really be interested in being involved in how that goes forward. So if you have any information there, I'd love to see it.
Yeah, thanks, Cindy. I don't have a lot of firsthand knowledge besides what I've kind of just heard and a little bit of what I've seen in site visits on Lopez, where I've seen a lot of commercial use that we haven't necessarily sanctioned. And so I think figuring out exactly how we're going to manage that going forward is important. And I think we'll be definitely talking with the parks about renewing our interagency MOUs and agreements after the RMP gets signed, and hopefully gathering some more data on our special recreation permits, the permitted groups that are out there, and then with our park ranger on the ground to be able to start making some observations and as I'm here longer, through another summer season, I'll be developing some more knowledge on what's going on out there. But I do know that that we see some large groups, and not necessarily something that we are condoning or authorizing. And so figuring out how we're going to reach out to the public and educate them, on the impact that that's going to have, I think is going to be one of the challenges. But yeah, I will mention one thing is that we've seen, I looked at the past visitor counts in Cattle Point, and it is my belief that we've been way undercounting the use there. So when the visitor use statistics are published this year, you're going to see a big jump in visitations at Cattle Point, because I think I might have talked about this last time. I took a bunch of different data sources to make a much better estimate of the use we're getting there, and it increased, tenfold from what we've been reporting in the past. And I feel that this new count of about 200,000 visits, I think is what I put, and it's much more accurate than the 15,000, I think, or something like that, than they've been saying in the past. And I'm really looking forward to getting a full year of good data on the sites that on Lopez as well. And so with the new both IR counters that I'm putting out there and the magnetic counters that count vehicle traffic, I think we'll have a much better idea of the the true public use of places like Watnell Bay and the parking lot over at the Iceberg, where we're going to put in a magnetic counter there that just counts the number of vehicles that goes by it, and so we can see what's going on.
Yeah, that would be great. I think I'd shared with you some of the information I'd seen this summer. I mean, we've seen bicycle groups going through the trails at Iceberg, and it was a larger group. It's possibly a tour group. We've seen a lot of tour groups using South Lopez now as kind of a launching spot. And then I also shared with you some of the information I'd seen just at Patos of commercial groups using that. So challenges there, definitely challenges there, but I think the MAC can really be helpful in some of these other areas. Maybe the tourism group, as here in the San Juans, can also be really helpful in trying to manage those groups and the use and the impact on the monument. Thanks.
Yeah, Amy, I'm so glad you're here. Amy Nessler, working with the tourism board, and we've actually been working on chatting a lot outside of West Forum on other projects. And yeah, we're thinking about this stuff, and I know Amy really thinks a lot about creating sustainable use out here. And I can't imagine having a better person over there to work with.
Tracy.
All right, we have a few more minutes before we hear from tribal members for comments. But I want to introduce to Bree and to all of us a woman who has just joined virtually, Elizabeth Kilinowski. She and I had a chance to work together during the comment period, and we often don't include Lummi Island in our thinking about San Juan Island National Monument, and we're familiar with our other friends group. Perhaps one of our next meetings, Elizabeth, if you're listening, you would be able to give us a fuller presentation of your preservation trust on Lummi. But if you could give us a few minutes right now to introduce yourself, and so that we know who you are and Bree knows who you are. Are you able, Elizabeth, are you hearing us?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I think I just did something.
We can see you and hear you.
Yeah, you're good. We hear and see you. We will be seeing on maps Lummi Island and the rocks that are surrounding Lummi here after our break.
I can't hear anybody anymore.
Turn up your
Something's
volume.
wrong.
How about your volume? Jamie, other suggestions?
And yeah, just check your
Oh.
speaker volume.
Here we go. This is Elizabeth. I'm sorry, I just came in. I'm on the board of directors of the Lummi Island Heritage Trust here on Lummi Island, and there's been back when Marcia and Nick were around, we had several meetings about the monument on the island, and residents were able to do some participation and commenting on the plan itself. So yeah, I would be willing to give you guys some future look at what we're doing here on Lummi Island and how we're trying to work with some of the other agencies like the Fish and Wildlife and the Department of Natural Resources, who have extensive lands on the island as well.
Great.
Great. And Elizabeth, if you could put in the chat your email address to make sure that I add you to our future contact list, and if there's a cell number you want to leave in there as well.
Sure.
And if you have a chance, just a link to your Heritage Trust website.
Okay.
Thanks, and thanks for joining today. And earlier in the meeting, we don't yet have a record of decision, but you will be notified when we have that information in front of us and when we can see what changes were made.
There it is.
Okay.
In the chat. Thank you, Elizabeth.
You're welcome.
And I was just wondering, this is a time if we had any other elected or the representatives, and I don't see that. And I mean, Sam's a member of the committee, but I do see Patty Govan as participating. Patty, did you want to make any comments at this point?
It's always a challenge to get things undone. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm just listening on behalf of Madam Chair, Terry Govan. Well, on behalf of all my people, over 6,000 plus now and growing. And I'm just really excited to see what the rod is going to say. And I'm also really encouraged from just reflecting back on day one when all this began and and it was probably my own insecurities as a representative for Tulalip, that where do we fit in? How do we fit in, and how do we make our voice heard where it's meaningful and understanding? And it's been a great ride, and we've come so far. And I think the tiered effect has been American Camp, which is truly an extraordinary expression of the San Juan Islands holistically, since time immemorial to today. I think it's just pretty amazing. And I'm just looking forward to being a part of this on behalf of my tribe, and we'll do whatever we can. And all of us tribes have some concerns, and so much of it's about the protection of our culture, our sacred places, and our footprint on the islands that still is there, and how we interact and become a stronger part of the communities there. So I'm just really glad to be here. So I'm just listening on behalf of my chairwoman for Tulalip, and Sam is doing a great job representing us tribes. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty.
Mhm.
Let's see. I don't think there's any others as I go through. So I would suggest our next was going to be the presentation on the working tools on getting to know your monument land. So why don't we take a 10-minute break or 12-minute, come back at 10:20, and in the meantime, Tom can get himself set up and ready to go. Does that work? Okay, thanks. Okay, is everybody ready to get started again? Tom, are you all set?
I think so.
Okay. Well, everyone's being so good with their cameras off. I'm going to assume that everyone's back in their places. So, Tom, why don't you go ahead?
Okay.
And thanks for doing this.
I'll start up. Let me get this started here. There we go. So the suggestion was that I talk a little bit with the MAC members and the public on the call about some of the monument sites and how to learn more about them. Because as Tracy pointed out, not all of us have visited all the sites. Not all of us even know where all the sites are. So today we'll give a brief overview of some of the places you can look for more information. We'll hopefully have time for questions, and I'll drill a little bit into a few of the smaller monument sites. So this map is one that you'll see on the BLM's monument webpage, and it covers the sites within the monument. It's not completely up to date. There's at least one rock or island that was renamed since this map was put out. But it gives you a sense of what's out there and where it is. It's a good reference tool, and it's actually a fairly readable map. I would encourage people to spend a little time with it, make sure it makes sense to them. You'll see that we have lands way over in Skagit County near Deception Pass, a bunch of lands up here in Whatcom County around Lummi Island and Chuckanut Bay, as well as all the lands that people are more familiar with, I think, on this call within the San Juans, including many, many small rocks and islands. So all the italicized names, the little yellow circles, the small diamond-shaped markers are rocks or islands within the monument. There's another map that is out there that you will see sometimes, and that's this one. It has caused confusion in the past, and largely it's because of that big green line around the monument boundary. To be really clear, the lands within that green line are not necessarily monument lands. Only the BLM lands within that boundary are part of the monument. So the monument rules, the monument RMT, the proclamation does nothing for private land or public land that isn't BLM land within that boundary. But the boundary is really important for interpreting the proclamation. The boundary shows the area within which all BLM land is monument property. And with some clarification from Kurt a couple of meetings ago, it sounds like all future BLM land, all BLM acquisitions within that boundary would automatically become monument sites as well. So it's also not a very pretty map. I don't like trying to explain that green boundary. I've done it way too many times. It has caused confusion in the past. So I would recommend that you stick to this map over here. One of the best resources we have was put together by the BLM in 2017, and that's the catalog of sites. That catalog isn't completely accurate. There are parcels in here which were later determined to be not BLM property. There were parcels in here, there are parcels missing from here that have since been determined to be BLM property. But for the vast majority of sites within the monument, it's a really good resource. And I'll show you an example page within it. And you can see in the upper right corner of the photo, there's a map showing where this particular site is. This is Lover's Cove Rocks off the northwest side of Orcas. You get a photo of the site and a brief description. So when you're reading the resource management plan, when you're hearing about an issue with a site, it's great to be able to say, okay, where is this and what does it really look like? So you will also notice, and it's important to know that the 2017 site catalog does not describe any of the proposed regulations or rules within the RMP or the proposed RMP. It shows what was going on back in 2017. So this says, it's not suitable for landing. It's only viewable by water. The proposed RMP actually has public access on these rocks. We'll see what the final RMP is, but you have to take any of the access and restriction descriptions with a big grain of salt. Do not use the site catalog for that. Use the site catalog for location, size, visual interpretation, etc. So now into the RMP, and this is where we start to get a little more definitive. The RMP is very explicit about the sites that it describes. There are 65 such sites, and there are two big categories. One is sites that are within recreation management areas, or RMAs, and a recreation management area for our RMP. Those are the areas where public access is allowed, and each of the 16 different proposed resource management areas, which I'll list in a second, have their own sets of usage restrictions. So in some places, camping is restricted to designated sites. In some places, off-road biking may or may not be allowed, that sort of restriction. There's a voluminous appendix in the back of the proposed RMP that describes each of the resource management areas and what's allowed there. But that's only 55 of the 65 sites. There are also 10 sites where no public access is proposed in the proposed RMP. And they are not individually described as to why, but collectively it's described as places with sensitive cultural and ecological resources. Clearly, that is a subjective term, because arguably every place within the monument has sensitive cultural and ecological resources, or we wouldn't have had a monument proclamation in the first place. But these were particularly sensitive to public access, and BLM has proposed that there would be no public access. We'll have to see what the final RMP says on that. And those sites with no public access are these. These are the 10 sites. I threw in a couple of extra photos of Lummi rocks in addition to the BLM ones on the left that I grabbed off the web, showing clearly there have been uses of these lands in the past. And it was not universally embraced in the proposed RMP with the public comments and protests that all of these sites have no public access. So this is one of those areas within the larger RMP where you're not going to make everyone happy. Some people are thrilled that no public access would be here. Some people are really unhappy that no public access will be allowed on some of these sites. Again, this is not a final list. That'll be coming out with the ROD. But these are the sorts of things where we will need to understand enough of the rationale to be able to articulate, when asked, why decisions were made, at least in broad brush terms. And we should expect to hear pushback from people who disagreed with the final decision from the BLM. These rocks are also hard to distinguish, and we'll get to this a little more later, from some of the places where public access might be allowed. So here you see Richardson rocks. It says the largest rock would have no public access. Well, the proposed RMP has other rocks at Richardson, smaller, that would allow public access, and how do we explain that to the public? How do we educate the public so that they know where they can and cannot go? I'm going to go really quickly through this, and we'll have some time to talk about it, hopefully. Here are the 16 recreation management areas. These are places where there would be public access. And as you can see, 3 of these are multiple sites within a recreation management area, but most of them are just a specific site. The site on Lopez Pass, the site at Cape St. Mary, Watmau Bay, Iceberg Point, etc. I'm not going to drill into any of those in detail today. We could spend, well, the BLM spent 900 pages talking about them, so we're not going to go into that level of detail. What I will do is talk a little bit about the rocks, because those 35 sites are more than half of the monument sites, and they were some of the most contentious. So I wanted to highlight them a little bit, give you a brief idea of what's in there and what was contentious about them, so that as you read the ROD, you'll have a little more grounding in what that meant. And I can go back to any of these slides during Q&A if you like. So these are the RMAs that had multiple sites in them. The Islands RMA on the left with its 7 sites, and then 35 sites within the various categories of rocks. Again, these range in size from very, very tiny, probably underwater at an extreme high tide, to about an acre in size in the case of some of the rocks and islands in East Sound. Here's a few pictures. I'm going to talk, I think it's worthwhile talking about the rocks as one set, not category A and category B. If you look at the proposed usage within the proposed RMP, there's very little, if any, distinguishing rules between category A and category B rocks. In some alternatives that were analyzed, there were differences, but they didn't end up in the proposed. That doesn't mean that's going to hold true in the ROD, but at least for now, we can say all 35 of the A and B rocks are fairly equivalent. If you look at the pictures, East Sound Blind Islands up in the middle, there's a North and South Island. Those are about an acre in size each, whereas obviously Leo Reef, which is visible from the ferry route just north of Spencer Spit, is much tinier. The total acreage on all of the islands and rocks in the category A and category B rocks categories is about 10 acres. So it's 10 acres out of 1,000, 35 sites out of 65, and they are lightning rods for arguments about the RMP. Here are the 35 rocks and islands. Again, the blind islands in East Sound are probably about an acre in size. The total acreage of all of these is about 10 acres. They're all marked on the map. If you go to the site catalog, you can see specifically, especially on the unnamed ones, where they are. They all have descriptive names, but not official names assigned to them. So for example, you'll find Seal Rock off the north end of Lummi Island. Leo Reef, again, is on the ferry channel north of Spencer Spit on Lopez. A lot of these are off of Orcas, though some, like Kanaka Bay or the rocks in Grandma's Cove, are off of San Juan. They are literally all over the county, as well as in Lummi County, or sorry, Skagit County and Whatcom County near Lummi. And here's basically what the proposed RMA said would be allowed or not allowed on the rocks. And there was strong objection to some of these, and but it was not universal. None of the objections were universal. So there were many people who objected to aspects of this, but not everybody. And I'll go on the next slide and talk about some of those objections that we should be prepared to think about as we look at the final ROD and as we prepare to talk to the public about what decisions were finally made now 3 years after the protest period, which is the last time the public really engaged with the resource management plan. And this is my last slide before conversation. These are some of the issues that were raised by the public during the comment period and the protest period. There were many, many, many people who said that public access to these rocks was inappropriate, both inappropriate for public safety, for habitat safety, for cultural sites that are on some of these places. You can read the list I wrote here. There's many more items that were brought up in comments. One of the big issues is my third large bullet here, is that people are concerned that there's no way for a casual visitor, a boater, a kayaker, to know whether the rock they're looking at is a National Wildlife Refuge rock, which you're not allowed to land on, whether it's a monument rock that you're not allowed to land on, or whether it's a monument rock that you are allowed to land on. And especially in places where there are many rocks, it's really hard to imagine that there won't be confusion and misuse. And that both means that some people will think that they don't have access to rocks where they do have access, but more notably, that people will think they have access to rocks where they shouldn't have access because that rock is part of the National Wildlife Refuge, or it's one of the places that BLM has said there should not be public access because of sensitivities within the monument. And so one of the things that is going to be a challenge to Bree, regardless of how this works out, is making sure that it's clear to the public what they can and cannot do on the various sites within the monument, but I'd actually phrase it differently, within the islands, because the monument is probably a little less than half of the rocks that exist within the San Juan archipelago. And there, as everyone knows, it's a very common boating and kayaking destination. So people do want to make a decision as to where they can go out to have a picnic, go out to go to the restroom, or where they can camp. There are also issues that cover the entire monument that were mentioned on the rocks. And I won't go into them in detail, but I would encourage people to take some time as we get to the ROD to think about where there were strong opinions, passionate opinions within the public, so that when we talk about rolling the ROD out to the public, we know how to do it in a way that answers people's questions up front and isn't mysterious to folks, especially folks who are really passionate about this. And I'm going to stop there, and we've got a little time for questions. I will say that we can go into more depth on these in future meetings. We can talk about other sites in future meetings, but I think it is important that everybody at least have some familiarity with the broad monument and what we are talking about when we talk about policies within that monument. So I'll hand it back to Jamie.
We're just going to say, since Tom put this together, and especially for the newer people, does anybody have any questions or comments? It'd be great, especially if you're one of the newer members to the MAC, to get some insights on these. Ruth.
Yeah, thanks, Jamie. Tom, I just want to thank you. This was a fantastic reminder. It's a subject that's near and dear to the hearts of many, many people. So thank you so much for taking the time to put this together.
Thanks, Ruth. Sam. Sam, are you muted, or I saw you are muted. I don't know why we can't hear you, Sam. You see that you're unmuted, but I don't know why we can't hear you now when we heard you so clearly earlier. I'm going to go on, Sam, and we'll come back to you, though. Elizabeth, you have a comment?
Yes, I was wondering if, and I'm not clear about this, is there another chance for the public to weigh in on comments and actually have an impact?
I don't believe so, but Tom, you want to comment, or?
No, I'm going to hand that back to Kurt. My understanding is no. They can always comment, but once the record of decision is published, it is a record of decision, and any changes to it would require a new NEPA or National Environmental Policy Act process, which is pretty arduous.
Yeah, there are a couple things that, thanks, Tom. And you almost hit it right on, man. You got it. There's a couple things. I mean, we can do amendments to plans. I mean, we can also change it that way, but you're right. It does require NEPA to get to that stage. So once the ROD's written, it is pretty much set in stone. However, the thing I'd like to remind folks is it's just a framework. It is not the final. It doesn't actually allow us to do specific implementation on the floor, on the ground. So what we need to do is we need to do site-specific NEPA that is framed from within the RMP. So the RMP might say, work with some trails, make sure that those trails are not impacting threatened endangered species, that sort of thing, or maybe some of our cultural resources. So then we would do NEPA, a site-specific NEPA project, which would outline where we're not going to impact threatened endangered species or cultural resources, et cetera. And then we might determine this is the new sort of trail system that we would have, and then we would work on closing off some of the trails, that sort of thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, can I say something else?
Sure.
I guess my concern in particular is the decision to allow public access at Carter Point and Seal Rock at the top of Lummi Island. Seal Rock in particular is covered with seals for a large part of the year. And it's very close to the island, and it would be extremely disruptive to have people even landing there. They have in the past, but then they're too close to the marine mammals, of course. And Carter Point is another quite isolated place. And if fires ever get started there, of course, there's an extreme, it's difficult to fight fires at the end of Lummi Island, because most of the entire island is mountainous and is covered in forest land.
Yeah, and I'm going to reiterate that what I described as the rules are from the proposed RMP, not necessarily the final RMP. And exactly the points that Elizabeth is bringing up were brought up during the protest period, along with many, many other site-specific comments. And so, at least from my perspective, we have yet to see what the final decision will be on things like public access to Seal Rock or Lummi Rocks or Carter Point. But that's exactly the sort of concern that is still out there. And frankly, the public had a voice literally 3 years ago during the protest period. And now we have to frame the rollout of the ROD such that people actually understand what decisions are final, or at least as far as the RMP is concerned, and the extent to which they can affect that, if any.
Jeff, did you want to add something?
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Jamie, as I don't quite across is that when we're doing the implementation, any projects or any other things, once we do NEPA for those, there will be a chance for public comment, and that, you know, will be reviewed. It's not like, yes, the ROD is final, but anything that we do within that framework is still going to have public comment periods. There's still going to be a chance for people to stay engaged, and that's what we're hoping for. And that's why the MAC is going to continue through the implementation portion as well. I don't know if that helps clarify it or not.
Thank you. Sam, do you want to give it a try again?
Yeah, can everyone hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Wonderful. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, I was just going to say thanks, Tom, for putting all that together. That's a really amazing presentation. You went in depth quite a bit. I was wondering if it'd be possible to get a copy of that slideshow. That might be something I'd like to share with the tribal forum.
I sent a copy of the slide deck to all the MAC members yesterday. Hopefully you were on that email
okay,
list.
great.
I'll go
Great,
back and
thank you.
that. It's a low resolution copy, just so it's an email, so it's not quite as readable with some of these maps.
Okay. Okay.
Great.
Thanks.
Anyone else have a comment or question? Whoa. Okay.
Yeah, Jamie?
Yeah.
I would like to thank Tom. I think that really shows to all of us and the MAC what we can be doing on future meetings. And at the end of the agenda, I want you all to be thinking now for MAC members and possibly even the public here on this call, what more types of education and in-depth work that we'll be doing. How did you like this presentation? Should we be doing this in a short summary every meeting? Be thinking about it. We'll discuss it as a working group towards the end. Thank you. And Tom, if you can hear me, before we go on any further, and I know we're going to lose Jamie, and I think we're a little ahead of schedule.
We are.
Yeah, and we definitely want to interrupt our main agenda here to acknowledge one of our MAC members who has been on and off the MAC, but has been our elected representative. And while Jamie, you will continue on the MAC as far as any of us know, but we do want to acknowledge your role in helping create the monument. And I think there's a few of us, even non-MAC members, even though it's not public comment. I'd like to open it up. Tom, would you like to start?
Could I make a comment before you move on, Tracy?
Sure, Genevieve.
Okay, hang on. Hi. One of the things that I remember listening to on an earlier meeting regarding the rocks and tribal interest, and it came from Sam Barr, and I think it's something to be aware of, that Sam brought up the fact that he thought that maybe the seal hunting and use of the rocks might be a good use of resources. And I was and I thought, well, there is a hint of some maybe issues in the future. And I thought, since that was brought up and it's sort of been tabled and it may actually be a part of the tribal forum, it's hard to know, but that there will be maybe some contention in the future regarding tribal interests and use of areas that are not, that are going to be excluded from the public use. I don't have an opinion one way or the other, but you can understand that there are multiple and overlapping interests in the resources of the San Juans, including the recreational resources and the visual resources, and just maintaining the integrity of the biological resources that we have. But the cultural impacts of all these decisions are still ahead. I just wanted to bring that point up. And Sam can comment if he needs to. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Jenny. I think that's something to discuss more in the future for sure. The public access is limited. How is that going to affect full access to some of those areas?
And I should point out that that the RMP is very specific, that nothing in here, and I believe the proclamation is also specific, that none of these regulations overrides any treaty rights. And I don't want to get in between the tribal governments and the federal government as to defining treaty rights, but those are protected by the monument. And there is permit access allowed through whatever mechanism BLM determines to get access to sites that are closed to the general public. So it isn't necessarily when we say no public access that no traditional tribal use is allowed, but that is a conversation between the tribes and BLM.
Great. Okay.
Oh,
Tracy, you were on a
yeah.
roll here.
Yes, thanks,
And
Jamie.
now can we
and-
go back to roasting Jamie?
Yes, and I know we heard some wonderful tributes yesterday, but that didn't include this group. So we may hear some things again, but that Tom, you were there at the early stage of creating the monument. We also have, I'm not sure if Asha is on the call right now.
I don't think so.
Yeah, but we want to, Tom, if you want to wrap up some appreciation here, because we will lose our, Jamie will lose his
unfortunately,
elected.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have 3 days to talk about Jamie. I wasn't at the very beginning of protecting these lands, especially the lands on South Lopez. Work with the public started there decades before the monument was created. But once we started serious conversations about protecting all of the BLM lands within the archipelago, Jamie was right there. Jamie was always a voice of sanity during all of those advocacy efforts. I had the privilege of traveling to DC with Jamie to talk to elected officials to try to get support. I've been on many field trips out into the monument with Jamie and testified to the county council where Jamie was on the other side of the table. I think as an advocate, Jamie is one of the most pragmatic and knowledgeable folks we could have hoped for in navigating the government structures we needed to navigate. He was always there to help reach out when he had a better link to someone we needed to talk to than we did. And once the monument was proclaimed, he stepped right into the MAC, and he was appointed by the council as their representative on issues around the monument. And he's been on the MAC since day one. He's chaired the MAC for the last few years. He's just been invaluable. And I trust and hope that he will not wander far from this forum now that he's going to cease being an elected official, even though he will still, at least for the rest of his term, and hopefully the next many terms, be a member of the MAC. I see Ria's face popping up. I'll let Ria talk.
Thank you. I just want to say that I too have had a lot of experience with Jamie on and off the MAC. And whether Jamie was on the MAC or off the MAC, he has been a really strong advocate for the monument. So his support of this effort has never wavered. I recall during the previous administration and the scandalous debacle with the Secretary of Interior and the head of BLM, we were in the midst of providing feedback to this RMP. And we ended up exchanging phone calls with Congressman Larson's office, just on and off, ping pong, volleyballing back and forth regarding the inability of the MAC to meet and the fact it wasn't being represented in the comments on the RMP. So really grateful. Jamie's credibility, I don't think he was on the MAC necessarily during that time, but he had great credibility with Congressman Larson's office, and we got a lot of help there. Also, Jamie has a lot of credibility with the governor's office, and as it came time to get information to the governor about some of the concerns about the RMP, Jamie was right there with that. And I also know that he's well respected among the tribes and has done considerable work trying to be faithful to that commitment. And also, like so many things about Jamie, always volunteering to help in one way or another. He was the landlord along with his wife for the BLM office and made a great effort to get that back door installed in the office so that security could be had for the BLM staff during some very contentious times. So he even helped keep people physically safe in that office during that time. So Jamie, I just thank you so much for being willing to support this effort, whatever position you hold. And because you have so many credible relationships and so much integrity, we value your feedback always and assistance. Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks, Tom.
Genevieve, I see you still have your hand up. Did you want to add something to this conversation? Or would anyone else like to add something to this conversation?
Well, thank you, Jamie. I wish I had had more time back at that time to be involved. But as we approach our 10-year anniversary, I think it'd be great for all of us to record in written form and oral form how the monument was created and the efforts that went into it. I think none of us will, hopefully this will go for into time immemorial as to protecting these lands, but we need to record the amazing efforts to get us to this point. And Bree, you and I can work on that.
I was going to add, in addition to Representative Larson, through a campaign event, we were able to, and this was with the help of, well, I was just helping Tom, I'll put it that way. Anyway, we got Senator Cantwell out to Point Colville and hiked around, for a couple hours, and we had an instant. If she wasn't a supporter already, she was. After that visit to Lopez. Okay, we can move on, right, Tracy?
I suppose just as long as you stay on the MAC and until you want to reapply as a public at large or other position.
Well, I've been assured I get to serve my term out. So then, and as went over earlier, Jeff went over earlier, looks like there'll be things are back on, they're back on top of being able to get people appointed. So that's where we are. The previous administration did give me a timeout, so but I'm back. So the next thing is the working discussions. You mentioned this, Tracy. We kind of already went over how we're going to find out about the ROD and the RMP and the changes. but I'd like the next point, which is the best format for gaining input and questions, particularly in the implementation. And there's Bree's name on here, but I didn't know if Kurt or Bree or Tracy, because I didn't put this item on the agenda. So if you guys would like to enlighten us, it'd be great.
Well, and it's on the agenda to open the discussion and brainstorm to how both the MAC and the BLM can gain insight from the public, and not just about, say, in the first few months of when the ROD is signed, but throughout the future. And it's something I think that could go into many different forms. The coffee meetings that Bree had suggested, but also how we, instead of just taking public comments in a meeting, how the MAC might get questions to look at ahead of meetings. So there's multiple things here. And so I wanted to open it up as a brainstorm. We can continue this at our next meeting. And so it's a combination. So if BLM has ideas from Bree or Kurt, and then I'd like certainly to hear from MAC members, how we might be able to get better input now that certainly the comment and protest period is over. Tom,
Yeah.
do you want to add anything to that? Or Kurt?
No. I'll let Tom go first. Go ahead.
No, I don't have anything to add to that. I think I've got some thoughts on it, but I think that describes the question well.
Yeah, and I can give you some insight, Tracy. I haven't worked it completely out, but I think I'm at like an 80% in my head of how we could possibly proceed with, what are the projects we should be looking at post, ROD signature, that sort of thing. So I'll start there. So in essence, what I would do is typically we have several processes that we start at the beginning of the year, beginning of our fiscal year. So that would be the October, November, and even before that in September, we'll start a process. And in that process, what we'll look at, now this is just the internal piece, okay? So the internal piece is we'll look at what funding sources are available, that sort of thing. And I'll give you a small subset right now is GOA, G-O-A-A, which is the Great American Outdoors Act. GAOA. And in essence, that is looking at funding recreation. Are there things that we could do to help recreation? Are there things that we can do to improve some of our sites? Are there things that we could do to improve the recreational experience? That sort of thing. So in essence, what I would think we would do is look at what are some of these known funding sources, and then look at the ROD and what are some pieces that we know that we could do right away that would possibly, I'm not talking about increasing recreation. I just want to make sure that that's clear. Okay. So it could be a site that we have that needs to be, let's say there needs to be pavement put on it, or it needs to be resurfaced, or the bathroom is extremely old and we need to redo the bathroom, or it could be a trails project like we mentioned before in the past here. Is there a trails piece that we could do to make sure that we have the proper trails and then close off the trails that we don't want? That sort of thing. So what we'll do internally is we'll look at all these funding sources. Bree will probably make some suggestions, and we'll put some things on a list. Let's just put it that way. Okay. And then at that point, that's when we'll engage all of our external partners. We'll engage the MAC, we'll engage our tribal partners, and we'll engage the public as well as our state and other agencies about, here are some of the things we're looking at. Okay. And here are funding sources. And that's a big thing for us. And Tracy, we got to kind of keep that in mind, because we can have great ideas to do X and Y, but if there's no money to get it done. That's problematic, of course. So in essence, we'll be looking at that. And there's a lot of different funding channels right now. There's the bipartisan infrastructure law. There's quite a few of them coming down the line right now. So there's a few things we'll be looking at. Okay, here's a group of projects. Then I'll have to get together with the district as a whole and which ones can we do as far as NEPA goes, because like we've talked about already, we have to do NEPA on those. So in essence, after we get together with MAC, public, tribal partners, other state and federal agencies, and we come up with that list, Then we'll start whittling away at doing our NEPA. And then once the NEPA is done, then we'll get on the backside of that, which is implementation phase, right? So that's the grand scheme, Tracy, that I have. So at that point, what I guess I'm coming from is we'll have a loose list. I would not say it's a complete list. And I don't want to do that, to be honest. I'm just going to show funding sources, and these are some ideas. And this is where we would start the conversation. But if the public, if the MAC, if other folks have other suggestions of places that are more important, like X or Y, you know, and I'm fine with that, we can substitute and have some different project. Let's say we have a trail that we want to fix on Lopez and not on San Juan, or vice versa. Certainly look at that, right? Well, where's the importance? What are we trying to do there? So that's kind of how I would assume we would do it. So we'll have a loose list and we'll start presenting that. But if other folks have other input, that sort of thing, we'll certainly take that at that time. And it's going to be difficult because I'm sure different entities will have different focuses. And I get that. And there might be other monies and other ways in which we can accomplish some things without full NEPA. Okay, so there are certain categories within NEPA that are excluded from the full NEPA process that we can get done that would, like, protect the site, for example, that we know is being obviously degraded. We don't have to go through the full NEPA process. So I hope that kind of gives people a general idea of how we would possibly move forward and how we would engage the MAC at that point. But like I said, it's just a loose list. We'll come with some ideas and then we'll start building from there. Tom? Tom, you can go ahead if you want, if you have a question.
So I just want to expand the scope a little bit beyond what Kurt described. There's a whole lot that I think the MAC can be engaged with BRE on that are issues and actions that don't necessarily escalate to the Kurt level. There is a lot of communication and relationship with the community where the MAC can be helpful. There is also a lot of just day-to-day work within the monument where BRE has the ability to move forward without invoking Kurt or NEPA. And it would be very helpful, I think, for the MAC to be aware of what are the drains on BRE's time, where is she finding ways to take advantage of volunteerism within the community and within the partner organizations, and we can help her to potentially attract more help from the community to get things done and be a sounding board for her prioritization of her time so that we can again represent to the public why certain decisions are being made the way they are and to reflect the public's input back to BRE. I think it's a fairly informal relationship. It's not going to be regimentized, but there are a lot of places where casual actions or everyday actions by BRE can have a huge difference, and by the staff in general and by the volunteer partner organizations can have a huge difference, both positive and negative. There's stuff out there that could easily get a big backlash unless it's well communicated and well understood how to avoid that backlash. And those are all things that the MAC could be engaged in as we go forward. But it requires a lot of partnership and a lot of transparency back and forth between the community via the MAC and BLM.
And I think that's where the conversation first started a few weeks back, is how do we, what is the system? What would work the best to be able to have the public reach out to the MAC if they feel that's where they want to direct their questions? Certainly they know how to reach out to the monument manager, to BRE, but what format would work? Would it be an online site? Is what working tool besides certainly we don't have one email for the MAC that people could send us a question or send us a concern. so that we could work on that and decide an answer as we go into implementation. So I don't have the answer to that. I want to, Tom, you and the online presence of what your knowledge is, if we could, as a group, come up with a way to field questions, field input on specific topics or on general terms.
So I'll just potentially disagree with you a little bit there. I think 90% of the time, those questions can and should go just directly to Bree or someone within the office, because the MAC shouldn't be in the way of clear communication or taking action on something if something needs to be acted on. There are places where Bree will want to escalate to us to help, and there are places where a member of the public or an organization may want to ask the MAC to get involved. But 90% of the time, I think the conversation should be directly with Bree and her team. Whether we need a formal way to reach out to the MAC other than through Bree and Jeff, I'm not sure on that. I'm open to suggestion on that.
Yeah. No, thanks, Tom, and certainly agreed. And it was also in thinking, do public comments, people have concerns, and we hear them this meeting, and then 2, 3 months, 4 months later, we address them again. So that's another piece that Bree could be bringing concerns to us to be brainstorming as she needs it. So
Bree, do you have anything to add to this? I mean, we're talking about you without you weighing in.
Well,
no, I appreciate it.
And Bree's name is on the item. So
I love hearing these conversations, and so yeah, I've been sitting here in the background just brainstorming in my own mind. You know, and just really, I was just thinking about like all of the issues, you know, like how we just communicate with the public in general, how we increase our, you know, our diversity and reach out to and hear from different voices. And it's daunting for sure. You know, and I guess I was just kind of thinking about like how I need to spend so much more time with all of you, as people, as individuals, as members of the community, as members of the MAC, as folks who recreate out there, folks who have all of this local knowledge that I need and I want, and I desperately, you know, feel passionate about, and just how to find the time to do that. Right now, it's kind of it is an overwhelming time. You know, I came here in May, and I'm picking up a lot of you know, what when I came in here was, you know, it's not like I was joining a team. It's not like I was you know, meeting someone out on the island who had, you know, who works for the BLM, I will say, who, you know, who could then take me under their wing. And Marcia has been wonderful, don't get me wrong. And, you know, and I can't imagine doing this job without her mentorship. And, but yeah, it's been kind of a steep learning curve. And so sorry that, you know, I haven't been more present with all of you. Just getting settled was a challenge as well, but we're getting there. Next summer is going to be really different. You're going to see my face around a lot more. Yeah, we'll have to figure, you know, the BLM really sucks at short notice notifications, because we have, you know, a process, right? Like we make a press release and then we take it to the, you know, our PIO, who then, you know, vets it with the state office, and then we, you know, put it out on our social media or put it out for publication. And so, yeah, we have to figure out how just us, this core group, is gonna, you know, forge our communication ties and keep each other, you know, in the loop on things, and just build those just personal relationships. And that's just going to take time. But I don't know if it helps or not to know that I really want that. You know, just finding time to do it and all the logistics has been challenging. I'm not gonna lie, it's gonna take some time. But I'm here. And I'll be fixing the phones and putting a lot of information on our websites, and I will be doing a lot of work on updating that. I have had some good news today that I think that rec planner positions are we're going to start working on announcing that. So, that's very exciting. And so I'll be digging into that more when we get off the call and tomorrow. Yeah, I think, some ways, like you said, acting as intermediaries where you already have relationships with folks and they trust you and they trust you to bring their voice forward, and use your power, and privilege to speak, can be really helpful. And I hope you know what I mean by that. I mean, I think there's just so many folks out there who are, for different reasons, just hard to reach, and we have to figure out ways to do that. And anyway, I get overwhelmed with thinking about these things because I want to do what's right, for everyone. And thinking about the monument in the long term, we have a big mission here. Like, that mission is to promote and maintain that stewardship. I am looking forward to engaging with you all on all those topics. And I think maybe, what was I saying? Sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought there. Our partner groups could be, really good ways to bring topics of interest forward, and also to communicate with the public, because, I can share things with all of you all that you can, share out on your social media and emailing lists and so forth that are much more, what's the word, flexible and quicker than, our BLM communications. And so when we're working on projects together, or you want me to come, as a guest to a meeting that you're doing, and I'm saying you as in like the organizations out there, that's just one idea I have, and making sure that we stay involved with things like the farmers markets and have our table out there for everybody who comes through that event and others on the other islands. I think will be a really good way that will make our presence out there in the public this summer. But I will be reaching out to you all. And if you don't hear from me, please reach out to me, because I get really, really busy.
All right, and I think some good ideas have been brought up. Bree, hearing about a time to have coffee meet up on the lands. It's certainly through the pandemic has not been, we aren't reaching as many people here during the workday. So certainly as we get into that implementation and you're discussing the ROD with meetings around the islands, that hopefully that'll be a time where we can pull in more community evening time if need be, in person. So
yeah, a big challenge that we have out here that other offices don't have is like there's an office and I'm sorry, my computer battery is just not working, and so I'm on my phone right now. But other places have an office where there's an admin staff and they're there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you may have frozen up a little bit there. Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, yeah. So we need to, we need help, which is simple things like, folks who are willing to answer calls. It would be great to train some folks up on just helping with our public face and our front desk operations and things like that. Like, getting some office help.
Great. Well, Jamie, we're going to be losing you in a little bit of time, and I know we want to just talk about our next meetings, and Amy, if there's any recommendations. And Jamie, I think you've just dropped off. Do I see you?
He just left.
Okay, so at this point, for anyone else here, we could go into our next discussion. I was going to see if we wanted any public comments earlier while Jamie was on, but I think we'll just hold those to the end unless we have anyone on public comments that is online and needs to drop off. But I think everyone I'm seeing has already. Yeah, I don't see any public members except for any of our friends group that may want to speak before public comments.
Hey there, Tracy. This is Erin Cora with Folks, and obviously back as well. Just to kind of wrap up what Bree was saying too. Just a quick little thing. On Sunday the 18th, the afternoon, we are actually hosting our getting back to hosting our holiday open house at the Lighthouse at Lemkiln, and I just really want to make sure everyone knows about it and is invited. We're kind of bringing things back on board after 2 years of hiatus with COVID, and Bree's going to be there, and hopefully some of the sister lighthouses can be there and represent. So just really want to make sure you guys know about that, and would love to see your faces for real and give some real hugs.
Oh, that would be great. And would you be able to provide transport at all if or know of anyone, if we reach out, possibly Amy, if there's a few of us that want to join in? We'll be in touch, Erin. I know.
Yeah, absolutely. If people are having a hard time getting from the ferry to Limekiln, we can work that out for sure. We more the merrier for sure.
Excellent, and great having Bree on San Juan too for that very reason. And Denise Wilk, who is on the call all day, we haven't really introduced, but she is a board member, very active board member of KOPL. She's the one you saw in the Christmas tree photo, and just big thanks to Denise. She planned the summer excursion, a boat excursion with over 30 people out to the island. So a big shout out to Denise, who is here on the call, and any other friends groups that have anything to update us on. This wasn't quite on the agenda, but with Madrona, any end of year updates? Well, that I don't see, and my voice is holding out. So I'm going to move on to the next meeting we have is scheduled for February 4th. As Kurt was saying, it has not, or Jeff was saying, it's not yet on the official register. He will let us know hopefully by mid-January, but certainly be holding February 2nd after doing the doodle poll, and also May 4th. And in between, hopefully we'll have some signing events, some other things happening. But I really do 2 points that we've been discussing is if any of the MAC members would like to learn more, what topics would you like to learn more about? Would you like to give a presentation of your area of expertise? Would you, anything like that, if you want to speak now or be emailing that to all of us. So any ideas for the future of big topics that will help us all work together better on the monument? Tom.
Well, I'll just throw out the obvious big topic, which is the ROD, what has changed since the proposed RMP, and how communication with the public is going or will go around that executive summary and the details of the ROD.
Great. So if everyone cross your fingers, perhaps that's exactly what our February meeting will be about. And if it is not, certainly involving at least one time per year, our friends groups to be presenting on everything that their friends group is involved with, what the challenges are, what the successes are, and more just making us all feel good that our partner or our friends groups are amazing. So Genevieve.
Hi there. I was wondering, I would love to be able to present to the group some of the results of my research in the San Juan Islands on cultural resources, especially on the BLM properties that I've been able to work on. I would probably work with Rich to figure out what would need to be redacted and what I could talk about, but I'd love to share through a you know, a PowerPoint presentation, some of the things that I think are very interesting and worthy of our group to look at.
Excellent, Genevieve. I would say that would be extremely interested in working with Rich. And if you need extra time on that, I would assume that at some point in our next meetings, we would want to fit that in. We may not know until mid-January if we even have a meeting and if the rod's coming through. So if it's something in your rainy days want to be working on.
Yeah, I would be super happy to share some of my work. I think before the monument was even created, the work that I did at Iceberg Point was very seminal to the rod itself in a way, as far as vegetation and cultural resources embedded in the vegetation. And I would just love to present to this group and whoever else might be interested. So thank you.
Excellent. Well, that's a perfect example of having a MAC member present from your area of expertise. Tom?
We talked about it earlier, but I do think that more information about work on the ground and data from the ground from Bree or whoever the right expert is always very helpful. So as she gets usage data, I have never heard a summary of what she's hearing or BLM is hearing through the monitor reports. And are there interesting tidbits from there, either issues that are being raised, trends that are being noticed, that would help us understand that whole process better, as well as whatever the specific issue is. And I completely agree with you, Tracy. The more we can hear from the groups that partner with the monument about not only their successes, but their frustrations, the more we can be useful.
Right. And we have learned that for subcommittees, it is, if we just want to be learning something, if we're not going to make a recommendation, we can have meetings that aren't federally registered and requested. I believe that's what I understood correctly. And it could be some of our friends and partners would like to give us a presentation, not during the working days. I know Carla Chalker, our head up the monument monitoring, she is working today. And so that could be great. We look at presentations that may need to be done not during this workday time. Another thing, as we look at the time here, today was also a start of kind of a packet of information. Where do especially new MAC members go to get up to speed? And I know several of the members have asked me to have a meeting even just to do that very thing. So for any member of what you might get frustrated with, what kind of working tool, it was excellent that Tom could put out in advance of the meeting all the sites and PowerPoint presentation so that you'll be able to save that. So we'd love to hear even today, if you have a minute, where, if you don't know a tool exists or a site exists, you may not know to look for it. So that would, it could even be a PowerPoint introduction that we all kind of compile together, especially if you're going off the Mac. What tools do you think would be really helpful for the new nominees or new members coming on? Does anyone have any thoughts on that? If we need our own website, is there a spot that we house that information so that we're saving it? For instance, the PowerPoint that Tom has had. Last year, we had PowerPoints from friends groups. Is that something we need to be preserving and saving as a Mac? Those are the thoughts I have, and any other information anyone wants to add in. Genevieve, is your hand still up on that one? All right, so those are things to be thinking about. We want to make sure our new members are able to hit the ground running even after a meeting or so, to really figure out how do you quickly get some of this knowledge? I had no knowledge until the comment and protest period. And so it is possible to get a quick understanding of the issues. Does any other MAC member have any recommendations of or items to put on the next agenda? And we'll go on to public comments if no one has anything to add. Amy.
Hi, thanks, Tracy. And just looking at the timeline, I think our next meeting may coincide when the Sustainable Tourism Management Plan comes out. So, and there will probably be public comment for that. So I would just be interested to put that on our agenda if there's items, if we need Kendra or Angela here, or if you would like me to present that. And then we can, if we want to weigh in as a MAC or just individually on any comments.
Oh, great, Amy. That would be great for you to do if you're comfortable with that.
Okay.
And certainly we would want to be updated on that, or at least a way to share that information out to us. But you're saying it coincides, it's not a timing conflict on February 2nd.
I don't have the timeline right now on when that draft comes out, but I'm hopeful that will be out by February.
Okay. And hopefully before when we know we have a meeting, if we know we have a ROD or don't have a ROD, we'll be putting out to all of you to be asking for any other agenda items. This is a group effort. Some of us have more time at times than others, and we want to make sure everyone has a chance to be able to alter and add to the agenda. Thanks. So without any other MAC members, bringing up any other business we did not cover today, we are going to, if it's not a problem, to start public comments before 12. We could stay on until 12 to make sure there isn't anyone just coming in at the noon hour. And yeah, thanks, Amy. So if you
Hey,
would
Tracy,
like, yes, Jeff.
it is perfectly fine to start earlier. We just have to make sure that we're still holding it at noon in case somebody does come on late.
Right, that's what I was thinking. So to open it up for any public, any elected official, any tribal member that would like to speak first time or second time, please do. And either just turn on your video or raise your hand. And I should say friends group too, if any. And as we're going to stay online, I'm going to see if Denise would like to tell us about the Christmas tree and how you got involved with that, how you were inspired to do what you did, and also as a fundraiser. Would you like to give us a little bit?
Oh, hi. Can you see me there?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Well, Denise Wilk here, Orcas Island. Years ago, I went in and asked Rosario, who the nonprofits are, how they're relating, and how people get together. And this year, COVID happened, nothing's been going on. So I ended up just calling out there a few weeks ago and saying, I really want to do the Christmas tree for our Lighthouse group. And I got a call back, I don't know, a week and a half ago that we got our tree. So I'm really excited about it. And just went out and set it up. I actually didn't have what I needed, but we have a great secondhand store here. So I cut out about 35 little stars and got historic pictures of all things Peytos Lighthouse and created little stars with photographs on them, and had a friend come out and we put it all together. And I think it's the most beautiful tree at the Rosario. And there's about 8 or 10 trees out there. So people can go out, buy a ticket through the Rosario Resort. Anybody that wants to put it, our big box is right in front of our tree. So you put your ticket in there, and it's a raffle for people buying tickets. So they'll get services and goods through the island and the community. And then also, $1 will be matched from everything from that lighthouse box will be matched by Rosario, which is really fun. And I didn't even know, it was a fundraising thing. I just wanted the exposure for our lighthouse. So I put our brochures out and made it a really nice presentation that you guys will see when you go. And last Sunday, the 27th, one of, my inspiration figures and someone I've known since 1990, Peytos Bill. We kind of named him Peytos Bill, but he was part of my inspiration for getting involved with Peytos. And, it's kind of a story, but anyway, his dying wish in 1990 was to go there because he thought he was dying. And that's the first time I'd ever went there. And my husband and I took him out. But I got really curious about this lighthouse. And then luckily, Nick Teague invited me to join in the group 2008. So that's just been a passion place for me. I'm very excited about it. And I hope I can contribute to your group. And I'm here if people have questions or anything that I know about. I've been involved since 2008 with the Keepers group. But I'm very happy I got my little tree out there. And even though it seems sort of insignificant, all the people that go through Rosario will see it, and hopefully they'll observe our information. And Peytos Bill passed away last Sunday, and I got information about that, and I'll send out to our friends where they can mail cards. But our big program with Bill and all these years has been to restore the flag out at Peytos Lighthouse. It was taken away in the 70s, but we still have a friends group that is putting effort into that. And we've raised over $20,000, and I have it in an account set aside for potential input or effort that we may eventually put a small flag or a big flag out there on Peytos Island. And we'll see. We know right where it was. We have all the photographs documenting it. So that's a big, important plan for me. And especially now that Bill's gone, I just got to keep with the program. We've lost Miguel Vitriel, passed away this summer, and he was my secretary. So we are short board members. So anybody that's interested, or tell a friend, we need some more board members out there for Peytos. And I'm the right now treasurer and sort of secretary. So you can always get a hold of me and I'm available. Thank you very much, Tracy, for including me in this invitation to be at the meeting. I appreciate it.
No, you're welcome. And
You guys are
thanks
doing a great
for
job.
and thanks for rescuing those of us when the ferries broke down and we had no place to stay on Orcas. So Denise, it's been great to be working with you. And KOPL.
Well, my cabin's available for you stranded folks, so you just let us
Okay.
know.
Well, thank you. So any other public comments or appreciations, anything that you would like us to be looking into for the next meetings? We'd love to hear from you.
Well, we'd like to be included. That's great. Thanks.
You're welcome. Well, as we fill a little bit more time, you're welcome to head off if you've got something going. But as Jeff says, we do need to keep this open through 12 o'clock. But we have Nancy DeVoe on the call today. And Nancy has been talking with some of us and to Bree. Nancy, would you like to introduce yourself?
Am I there?
You are, and great to see you and to see you in Zoom here.
Well, I don't really have a question. I'm following progress, hoping to write some more about the monument for the Salish Current regional news online paper that I sometimes write for. So you guys are doing a great job. I'm eager to see what the ROD says, but I think all the progress is optimistic, so I feel good about it.
Great. Well, thank you for also writing up a very in-depth report. Was that September?
It was a few months back. I can't quite remember.
Yeah. And if we may have put that out, we may not have, but would you mind just putting a link to that article in the chat for anyone that did not get a copy of that?
Sure, I can do that. It'll take me a second, but
yeah, I know it was still not knowing when the ROD would be signed.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Hi, Denise.
And Nancy, you are located, where are you located?
On San Juan Island. So I was happy for us on San Juan that Bree's office is going to be here, and that'll make communicating and being involved easier for me and the partner organizations that are here. I think that's important. So as luck would have it anyway.
Right. All right.
Could I say one thing?
Of course, Denise.
Well, I just want to thank you, Tracy and Bree, who I've had a chance to interact with, for your kindness and your openness, and the idea that we have a voice through you guys. It's delightful. I'm totally feeling uplifted, and you know, all these years, I just sort of, you know, had this disconnect, but I feel like we're really connecting, and there's a lot of hope for the future. So that just pleases me, you know, because we're all getting older and we want to see things happen, and it's nice to see things happening. And I just feel your light, Tracy. You are like a shining star. I love you so much. Anyway, you guys, thank you so much. You're all great, and I appreciate the effort. Everybody in our county, we're all working. I think we're holding hands. I love it. Thanks.
Right. Thank you. We all need appreciation, certainly at this winter time of year.
Okay.
So any other public comments of any good work that's happening in your little world? Tom?
I'd propose we take about a 15-minute break, reconvene at noon for
Okay,
the public comment that comes in.
that sounds good. And thank you all for joining if you are going to leave the meeting. And we are recording this meeting. It worked well the last meeting. I successfully saved the recording. We uploaded it to a private YouTube account, and then we got that to the BLM. And I've had people inviting them to this meeting. If they couldn't make it, they've asked to get that recording sent out. So that's been something that we'll continue doing unless we hear any objections. All right, so 15-minute break, and we'll come back right at 12 for anyone just to say goodbye or see about public comments.
I can see you now, Nancy.
Yeah. And for anyone that can hear, that hasn't stepped away, Nancy has posted the Salish Currents article that was written up very in-depth that Nancy was able to publish in September.
Thank you, Tracy.
Hey, and Denise too. This is Erin. I am really sorry to hear about Pato's bill. That's really sad.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, we've kept in touch, and he really loved the effort and energy that we're putting in, and it gives me more energy and inspiration to follow through and keep going when sometimes you just feel like, you know, there isn't enough of you to go around to do what you think you need to do, but then you realize, hey, you know what, we'll just do what I can, and that makes you feel better, like you're not a failure.
Yeah. Oh, I thought you really wanted that flagpole up. So I want to plug back in a little bit more to KOPL like I have in the past and create some space and time for it again. Do miss you guys. I miss Patos and being out there. So but
yeah, I'm going to try to come to your event on the 18th, and you know, for his birthday a couple years ago, I have a parade flag, and I paraded it out there and had cake and held that flag high, and I really feel the emotion behind it because you know, it means a lot to me. It's a deep connection, and anyway, yeah, I get all really emotional about it. So thank you so much.
What was his last name, Denise?
Lavergne, and it's Lavergne, Bill Lavergne. And I put a little, if anyone's going to Rosario, it will be on through the end of the month. But, you know, I put a lot of wonderful little snippets on those stars, just activities and events, things that we've done over the last 20 years, or, you know, it hasn't been 20 years, like 14, 15 years, seems like it.
well, it's been great. It's been so great. And thank you, Denise. He was a wonderful person, and he'll be sorely missed.
Yes, well, and Denise, this is Tracy, but the years he was in the Coast Guard at Patos was in the early 60s. Remind me of the dates that he
I'd have to really check, because I thought it was more in the 50s.
Yeah,
but
okay.
You know, when I met him, it was just different. Dan and I forgot about him for a long time. Then 2008 rolled around. I met him in 90, 91. He came with us a couple times for our charter boat. Then I looked on the back of a picture in one of my picture books, and there was his phone number. And I just randomly called him in 2008, and we reconnected, and then we really stayed connected. So
yeah,
we helped him move out of his house to, you know, his retirement home, and we've done things with him when we can down in Tacoma. But, you know, we've always kept, he's like Uncle Bill.
Yeah, and the interpretive panels inside the lighthouse really showcased him and his time out there as well. And he was very honored to have that that he was able to see in his lifetime.
Oh, for sure. You guys, everybody, you know, and it was just because it's like a mascot. It's like that energy. There's so many bills. There's so many people that just being involved with the organization that, you know, reached out. Wow, it's really something. It's a family.
Yeah.
And having that helicopter land for our birthday party was the best thing I'd seen in all those years. And it was because of the ham operators. And that's the link that I feel like has been missing, that we're going to try to focus more on, to communications and the ham aspect of it. Anyway, I'm excited about that. And having that helicopter come down, oh my gosh.
Oh, that was great. That was great. And the ham operator, the 2 events we had out at the lighthouse.
Exactly.
Yeah. And for anyone that doesn't know, I'm the docent coordinator for Peytos, that if you want to get out there for a work party, for an overnight, very amazing camping experience to Peytos, please reach out to me. We'll be working on that in January.
Well, I'm going to help you, Tracy.
Well, thanks. I'm going to go take a 5-minute break, and I'll be back at 12. So I do love the conversation.
And Tracy, really quick, this is Erin. I have to scooch to get to Stewardship Network meeting as well at noon. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to cut out early at the moment. There aren't going to be any voting items anymore, are there?
No, we're good. We're good, Erin. So
great to see everybody and hear everybody, and hopefully we'll see you on Sunday on the 18th.
Great. Thanks for letting us know.
Denise, Nancy, Denise, what is your email?
It's dwik.kopl@gmail.com. So it's just dwilk.kopl@gmail.
Okay. Stay in touch with you and see you.
Yeah, let's hook up for the 18th or something.
We used to be good friends like 30 years ago. No.
Well, there's no not being good friends.
I know, but
it's like hands across the ocean. The ferry isn't making it any easier.
No.
I turned off my camera. Okay.
About the 18th. Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah, I have to look at my calendar because it's just getting over there. Maybe we'll bring the boat over, but we might need a ride. I don't know.
Oh, okay. Keep me in touch if you do.
Yeah. Well, it's like an open meeting with a bunch of people. So you have my phone number, 3764663. You could just call me, Nancy.
64663. Okay, I'll send you an email too.
Yeah, call me Nancy. I'll call you Denise.
Okay, I actually do have another meeting at noon, so I think I'm going to get off of this, but.
Okay, hold on. I'm going to turn my camera back on. Here we go. There we go. I'm sitting here by my. Goodbye.
We can't tell if any of these other 17 people are listening or not, so.
It's okay. You know, I'm happy to be part of a group, and you know, my big deal with the lighthouse. It's very, you know, I just feel like it's an ancient place. We have to honor that, and I love it.
I'm so glad you're doing it, and I love how your Zoom photo has that Native American artwork behind your head. What is that?
Those are my paddles.
Cool.
Yeah, one's a Samish paddle, one is a Lummi paddle, and my part of my thing was the island itself being the place where people are coming to experience part of their culture. I want to involve more with the canoe journey. I've only volunteered, you know, I went over to Anacortes and volunteered at a canoe a couple times to do cooking, but that's all. I cook for them to help, you know. But I love the canoe journey, and so these are special paddles.
That's great.
Yeah, well, you know, I had my shop. So anyway, let's talk on a private time, okay?
All right, good. I'll see you soon, I hope.
Okay. Yeah, well, I'm on
11 days.
Exactly.
All right, I'm gonna leave. Bye.
Yep. Bye, Nancy. She goes. Okay, video.
I'm reading through the chat if anyone's listening before we reconvene at 12 for public comments, that Tom is wanting to know what base information we should share with you, and do you feel that you understand the sites well enough, or would they like more information? We've kind of covered those two things, but certainly you can email us with feedback, or what sites do you want, would you like to present on or have good information about, or would you like to learn more?
Thank you, Tracy.
You're welcome. There's also a chat I'll point out from Madrona Murphy that they have an annual report on Indian Island Marine Health Observatory, and it is tomorrow on Zoom. And so if you would like to zoom in on that, please do. The link, her address, I'm going to repost this, Madrona, if you don't mind, at the bottom of the chat. And if in fact, if you want to post what time that is, it's not always easy to keep up with the chat and everything else going on. Is there anything in the chat that hasn't been talked about or answered? And one point too, if there's anyone on the call or anyone you know that wants to be kept abreast of our meetings and any special events, and you aren't on the notification list, either from BLM, from the MAC group, or from the Islanders for San Juan National Monument, please get their email and send that to us, or so that we can continue informing anyone that has an interest. Tom makes a comment on the chat that if we have non-official educational meetings, that we do keep those open to the public. And that is a good reminder that anything that we're working on together, the public would be interested in learning and can give us feedback about. All right, so it is 12 o'clock and give a few more minutes, but if there's any public comments, this is the official time. Raise your hand or turn on your video. And Kurt or Jeff, as we wait for anyone to come online at this time, do you have any final comments? Even topics for future meetings that you would want to be discussing or giving?
I don't have any, Tracy. Thank you.
Well, I'm going to say that the meeting will now adjourn, and I'm not the best at leading a meeting. Do we need to make a motion to end the meeting, Tom? Or do we just say goodbye? I'm going to stay on a little bit longer.
We haven't traditionally, we just adjourn.
Okay. So I'm going to stay on a little bit longer to get the recording.
You've done a great job, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to call the meeting over, except for I'm going to stay on.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. Happy holidays, and we hope for good news in
Happy holidays.
January, and see you again in February.